In this video, I will be doing my video response to MxKellyBear's 54321 tarot tag. I was tagged by the lovely Jess of Jess Reads Cards and the lovely Annette of Project Refined Life. So thank you both for thinking of me. The premise of this tag is simple but brilliant at the same time, with 54321, each of the numbers representing a specific prompt related to tarot. 5 being tarot decks, 4 books, 3 spreads, 2 habits and or paraphernalia, and 1 piece of advice or a card to embody. Plus we tag 5 other creators. MxKellyBear left these prompts very open and flexible with regards to how we choose what we choose. And for the decks, I heard the number 5 and I immediately thought 5 decks for 5 elements. I know there have been element related tags. I'm pretty sure there was one going around when I first started watching TarotTube about 4 years ago now. I never did a VR to any of those, so I thought I would squeeze that in with this just because it's a very important part of my practice and it fits perfectly. So what I'm going to do now is use these beautiful element cards from the amazing Earthbound Oracle. This was a gift from the lovely Jess, and I love these cards so much. I laid each of the elements down, and I'm going to choose a deck to represent each element. There's the Earth card. Gorgeous. Air. Fire. Water with the gorgeous lotus. And there is no ether or spirit card in this deck, but there is an arcana card, and I thought that would be a good placeholder for the ether deck. It's because arcana concerns things that are hidden and mysteries, and I thought that was perfect. For the earth deck, I instantaneously thought of the Pholarcos Tarot. This deck is extremely earthy. It's very ancestral to me. It has it's deep roots for me. When I first saw these cards, they felt familiar. I know I've heard people talk about that about other decks. They look at the cards and they feel like they've seen the images before, or something just felt familiar. And that's how it was with these. This deck is also special in a way because this is the tarot I have chosen for Esther's Drop 'em 78 challenge. The challenge that is done at the beginning of the year, where we walk through each of the cards, one card one day at a time. That Queen of Swords is amazing. The suits are different in this deck. They are wings, coral, sparks, and spirals for swords, cups, wands, and coins or pentacles respectively. And this tower card is one of my absolute favorite cards of all time. It's that splitting apart, which the tower is. That's a great metaphor for that experience. The aces are all in sepia, black and white. Strength is at 11. Justice is at 8. And these minors are incredible because they, the numbered minors 2 through 10, they have little bits of text throughout, and it's just another added layer of how one might interpret these cards. But yeah, this deck is very ancestral. It has that ancestral feel. I actually bought it because when I saw the Justice card, which actually didn't show up in this little flip through, my heart kind of skipped a beat just because it felt, the figure of that card she looked like she could have been an ancestor of mine, and it was just very striking. So Pholarcos for Earth, that was kind of a natural. For air, I have chosen the Field Tarot. I've heard others talk about this deck being kind of watery, and I could see that. This is the mass market edition by US Games. The artist and creator is Hannah Elizabeth Fofana. And my copy looks a little different because I have trimmed the keywords off. I didn't really use it at all until I did that, and it just became a very usable deck to me once I trimmed it. But the Field Tarot, it does have kind of a watery sort of energy, but it's full of straight lines, angles, and symmetry. And that for me is very air. Air is very linear. It's logical and strategic and balanced when it's in its healthy energy. And this deck just has all of that for me. This straight lines and angles and symmetry all over the place. And this just feels like a very intelligent deck. There's an intelligence to this deck that I don't often really hear people talk about. And there's often that that straight on horizon line in the background of these images. I love that 4. That's very Hughes Picard. And there's a straight diagonal line, the symmetry of the horses and the chariot. I love that card. I did a video featuring this deck. It was the One Deck Gone Wild tag, and I used this deck. I'll try to remember to link that video. So the Field Tarot is my air deck. Next deck is the Fire deck, and for fire, I have actually chosen my Pagan Otherworlds. I have said before in other videos that this deck is very fiery to me. I know a lot of people associate this deck with Earth, and that is a very natural and intuitive association just because Pagan Otherworlds, Pagan traditions are very, very, very much Earth-based, and it has those autumnal colors. But it's fire for me in the energy of the figures, their facial expressions, their movement, the movement of fabric, even the face in that mood card. It's very intense. There's an intensity to these cards that it's just very fiery. It's very yang. It's intense. And the rams on the chariot, they are rearing, and the staff is pointed upward. That's a very fiery card to me, right there. Lots of movement, swift movement. I love this wheel a lot. Definitely earthy, but for me, energetically, it's extremely fiery. Oh, this is by Uzi. This is a very well-known deck. It's indie, and I'm fairly certain it's still available. The death card, wielding the scythe in the air. It's a great death card. Very pippish with nods to RWS. And that is the extra card. I don't know why it's in the deck because I don't typically use extra cards, but that one just made its way in there. Yeah, this one's gorgeous. Uzi cards are, the quality of these decks are second to none. I also have the companion book that goes with this deck. This Hermit is incredible. Look at that. Yeah. Very fiery, very swift, intense movement and motion. So Pagan Otherworlds is my fire deck. For water, I have chosen the Fountain Tarot. I actually hear the Fountain Tarot being described often by others as very airy, and I can see that as well, but this deck is very dreamy. This has a very dream-like quality to it. There's straight lines in this as well, but there's a flow in these cards that I don't feel in the Field Tarot, and the facial expressions are very expressive and emotive. The creator of this deck is Jason Gruel or Gron. I'll try to remember to put it up there somewhere. Strength is 11, Justice is 8, and that is the same in the Field Tarot as well. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, this deck is watery. It's dreamy. Look at the water there. It just has a flow and it's very Piscean. It has a very Piscean energy to me. But it's a really good reader. As far as clarity goes, I got kind of lost in flipping through these cards. I just kind of kept going on and on and on and on. And this is a deck I can get lost in very easily, and that is a characteristic of water for me. And that Empress is incredible. Love her. I love these cards. I don't use this deck enough. I need to use it more. And that Queen of Wands is, I mean, that's a very fiery energy, but this is a very soft Queen of Wands. It's very watery. That's my water deck, the Fountain Tarot. My deck for Ether or Spirit, or the Arcana placement here, might not seem like a very likely choice, and it might be a bit anticlimactic. But I chose the RWS, and there's a reason. There's a few, actually. For as much as I complain about these cards, and I complain about this deck quite a bit, particularly about that stabby heart, Three of Swords, just because that's not how I read that energy. But for as much as I complain about this deck for me is... it's hard to describe. If I want a tarot that will just tell it to me straight, and I want scenic minors, nothing does it for me like this one. If I want a pip deck, I'll go to my Ancient Italian. If I want a scenic deck, I won't even go to a clone or an RWS based deck. I will go to this one. There's an energy in this that just speaks. It's like instantaneous downloads. And there's the John Travolta Nine of Cups that we all know and love. But yeah, instant knowing, instant communication. And I don't have that really with any other tarot but this one. And it could be because this was my first tarot and this is kind of what I learned on. But also, these images are so well known and so embedded in the consciousness of the tarot collective that I do feel that there's something in that. Because for many people, both new readers, seasoned readers, and even people who don't read tarot but might be familiar with what tarot is, this is what tarot is for a lot of people. And I can't help but respect that, respect this deck for what it is. It's just one of those things that just speaks really clearly. It always has, and there's never any, I never, just go, huh? I never have that. Which is one of the reasons why I don't use it actually too terribly often anymore, just because there aren't a lot of instances where I really need to be in that energy very often. And so it's like the mystical shaman that I talked about in my last video. I use it sparingly, but I have mad respect for that deck. And so that is my Ether deck, the RWS, and that's the Centennial Borderless by US Games. Next is books. For my first book, I'm jumping right into the Marseille Tarot revealed by the late Yoav Bendov. This is a Llewellyn publication. There's been a few editions of this, I think, but this is the newer printing. This book is... I'm going to reference numerology a lot when I talk about books, just because it's along with the elements, it's such an important part of how I read. And I get asked a lot to do numerology videos in relation to tarot, which I have really not done, but intend to do. The way this book is set up is really phenomenal, particularly that section I just pointed to about the symbolic language. It breaks down color, body positioning, numbers, and a whole myriad of of topics, and it's laid out in a great way. The section on the courts is fabulous, and I have been referencing this extensively for my court card series that I've been doing, just because the way that Bendoff sees the courts is very similar to how I see them. And there are a lot of different ways to make the material accessible. There are like full on write ups for each of the cards with keywords. I don't necessarily resonate with the keywords he used, but the fact that they're there can be a good sort of primer for people who are wanting to learn the Marseille and kind of make that connections. There's a little section on the majors as far as extra little tidbits, and then there's a quick glossary for all of the cards in the back. It's a great resource for learning Marseille. Speaking of numerology, for my book 2, I'm being a little cheeky and bringing in a book that is not at all about tarot, but it was fundamental in helping me solidify my numerological associations. This is by the Library of Oracles, and to my knowledge, this is still out of print, and I've seen it go for astronomical prices on eBay. But this book is great because not only is the book phenomenal, but it came with a set of cards that you could use sort of as an oracle unto itself or as a study tool. And I found this resource so valuable because it presents the numbers in different facets. It's not just this number means this. It has each number, including 0, in its inhibited form or sort of low energy, its exaggerated form, sort of high energy, maybe a little over the top, and then what they call the solution or the number in balance for the context at hand. And this opened up just a whole new realm of understanding, particularly this table in the back. This book and how I put this information together and assimilated it for myself, this is one of the reasons why I never feel the need to read reversals, because I was able to see all of the nuances of various numbers. So that was my book 2. For book 3, I'm bringing in a deck guidebook, which, I don't know if that was technically allowed, but I'm doing it anyway. And actually, I'm bringing in one more. So books 3 and 4 are guidebooks for decks. This is the Elemental Power Tarot guidebook. The deck is by Melinda Lee Home. I have been using this deck in my court card series to sort of relate the elemental aspects to how I read the courts. And the courts and the write-ups on the courts are the main reason why I am showcasing this book for this prompt, just because the way the courts are set up is brilliant. The elemental associations are on par with what how I see them. And the page is the novice, the knight is the champion, the queen is the nurturer, and the king is the strategist. And for a person who struggles with courts, if you do struggle with courts, I feel that that could be really helpful. And each of the majors has an apothecary association. So for example, the star was honey, and I thought that was just a little great addition. So this is one of my favorite guidebooks, as is this one, book number 4, which is Tarot of the Hidden Realm. This is a Barbara Moore guidebook, and I am a Barbara Moore fan girl. I love her books. I just do. This is a Llewellyn publication. The bummer is I don't resonate with a lot of the decks that she writes the guidebooks for. This is an exception, as is the Steampunk Tarot. But these spreads in the back are spreads I've been meaning to try for ages, particularly the 7 card, which is essentially, it's like a variation on a horseshoe. Those positions could easily be found in a horseshoe, but it's just laid out differently. And I want to try it because I really feel the cards could speak well to one another while in those positions. But the main reason I chose this guidebook is it offers something different for interpretation, and I am actually going to freeze this little bit for the 10 of Wands because this 10 of Wands interpretation, the first time I read it, I cried because it moved me so much, and I'm going to read it aloud to you.
It feels so fragile, even to his gentle hand. He holds it carefully, imagining a tiny phoenix within, growing in strength, but not yet ready to be born. The egg trembles slightly against his palm. Moving the treasure near his heart, he stills himself and quiets his breathing until he feels the beating life in the egg match that of his own. When will he feel confident? When will he not worry about damaging the gift he's been given? Even after careful preparation, making himself ready with paint and beads and meditation, he worries. Yet this is what he wanted. This is his life. The thumping in the egg grows stronger and steadier. His own rises to meet it. With each chorus of the thump, the thump, the thump, his courage increases. He presses the egg more closely to his chest until he can feel the immeasurable energy and infinite potential within. Only thin shells, the eggs and his own, separate him from it. Although still somewhat uncertain, his desire overcomes and he hesitates no longer. In between one thump and the next, he and the egg merge. The egg moves through shell and skin to meld with his heart. He and the phoenix are one, and now anything is possible. Divinatory meaning. The intense energy and power of the Ten of Wands can feel like a burden. How can you possibly wield all that potential? It is a big responsibility. The secret is to realize that it isn't something that exists outside of you. It is your own passion to be lived and expressed through your life, not something external that you have to manage. The difference is subtle but important. Live your life. Don't let life live you. Embrace the immeasurable energy, for it is within you. It is not a burden thrust upon you. Is that not incredible? She mentions burden, which is a common association with Ten of Wands, but there's so much more there. It's deeper and more elaborate and metaphorical, and the guidebook as a whole is just, that's how it is. It's just filled with more of that, and I just love it for the variation and alternatives that it offers. The artist of this deck, Julia Jeffrey, has a tarot coming out later, the Witch Sister, I believe it's called. It looks beautiful. I might grab that, but yeah, so that is my fourth and final book.
Now we get to 3 spreads, and I'm actually going to do something a little different for this one. Rather than demonstrate those spreads for you here in this video, I'm actually going to redirect you to a video that I did at the end of April that I called my top 5 tarot spreads. I did a whole video about spreads. And the 3 that I'll highlight, as far as if you do go watch this video and you're wondering which 3 I might want to highlight here, I will highlight the 2-card variation of the yin yang spread. I find that very useful. I will also highlight the elemental timeline spread and the 12+1 zodiac spread. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm directing you to another video I made, which might be a bit cheeky of me, but I think it's practical and, considering the context, relevant. So there you go. Link will be in the description box. Next up is 2 habits and or paraphernalia. I suppose mine are a bit of both. This is my Aveda Shampure Oil. It's been in a lot of my videos, and I use it pretty much every time I handle cards. The scent is amazing. If you're familiar with this scent, then you know what I mean. Scent and sound are very powerful methods of grounding for me, and I just like the tactile feel of the oil on my hands. And I've gotten questions about does the oil affect the surface of your cards, and I have not had that experience. So the oil, that is paraphernalia, and it's also a habit, I suppose. My other piece of paraphernalia / habit is a pen and some kind of notebook. this is my favorite writing pen. It comes in multiple colors, but this particular type of pen, this is the Sarasa vintage in the metal grand bodies, the .05. I love these pens. That's just my favorite everyday writing pen. And just a journal or notebook of some kind. So this is an example of a notebook that I did for a tarot challenge where I journaled every day in the month of January in 2022. And I put photos of the cards. I scanned and printed color copies. And I just wrote about the cards in relation to the prompt. And writing about your cards is really powerful and enlightening, and it's just an ingrained habit slash piece of paraphernalia that I always have in relation to reading. So oil and notebook pen, those are that's a functioning unit for me, the notebook and pen, so that counts as one. So that's my 2. And last but not least, one piece of advice or card to embody. And I thought about doing advice, but there's already been so much great advice given that I felt I would just leave that alone and do the card to embody. And here you can see I'm flipping over all of the Knight of Cups cards that were in the decks I featured in my 5 decks. The Knight of Cups was an energy that made its presence known to me during Pisces season as far as an energy to reacquaint myself with. I spend a lot of time in the Queen energy, and I was thinking back to when I was like a younger woman, like in my 20s, and how I very much embodied the Knight of Cups energy and how good that energy is for me when it's carried out in a healthy way. And I just need to sidetrack, and that Knight of Cups from the trail, the Knights are trails in the Pholarcos Tarot, that Knight of Cups is something else, and I'm actually sitting with that card for a while. So that's the card I've been kind of working with and reacquaint myself with and explore. So yeah, that's my one card to embody is the Knight of Cups. And that is the end of this fabulously fun tag. I have to say, I've so enjoyed watching the VRs to this one, and a lot of the people I can contemplated tagging have already done a VR, so I'm going to try to tag 5 creators that I have not yet seen a video from that I would love to see a video from. So I am going to tag Masha of Musings by Masha, Emily of Emily's Witchcraft and Tarot, Thea of Garden Goddess Tarot, Carrie of Carrie's Mystical Musings, and Monica of Whitsunday Oracle. No pressure, no pressure, but I would love to see VRs from you if you get a chance to make one. Thank you so much, MxKellyBear, for the fantastic tag. It was such good fun, and it's been a joy to watch all of the responses. So that is all I have for this one. Relevant links will be in the description box. I will try to remember to link everything I said I would link. So that's that. Until my next video, take care and be well.